Right here in the 5 o'clock hour in Los Angeles, getting right down to business with the news-driven hour in the heart of drive time. Mottek On Money 5 nights a week for you, live on the air on 790 KABC, online streaming live at KABC.com and the on-demand Mottek On Money podcast at KABC.com, Apple, iTunes, and all of your favorite podcast platforms. Well, let's call it a well-fed pullback for stocks today, ending the stock market's longest winning streak in 2 years. Stocks closing near the session's lows today after a poor Treasury debt auction and after the Fed Chairman Jerome Powell said in a speech today and warned of higher interest rates might still be needed to tame inflation that's still running hot. The Dow coming in for a closing loss of 220 points. The S&P 500 dipped 35 and the NASDAQ closed down nearly 130 points. For both the NASDAQ and the S&P 500, what we just saw was the longest winning streak since November 2021 come to an end. Stocks closing near the session lows after a $24 billion sale of 30-year Treasury bonds went poorly. Stocks initially started the day higher. Looked like the rally was going to continue, but did slip after the Fed chairman spoke to the International Monetary Fund today, suggesting interest rates might not be high enough yet to bring inflation sustainably down to the Fed's 2% annual target. He said the Fed's 2% goal is not assured. Inflation has given us a few head fakes, in his words. And in response to the question, the Fed chair said there probably are a half a dozen explanations for why longer duration bond yields have shot higher. He said, I think we really don't know. How about that for a profound answer? But the Fed chairman also said the Fed currently was not trying to make decisions based on the move in higher long-term government bond yields. We also heard today from the president of the Richmond Federal Reserve Bank. He said at a separate event that it remains to be seen if more monetary policy tightening is needed. He also downplayed the role of moves in long-term bond yields when it comes to informing the Fed's monetary policy decisions. As we saw recently, the yield in a 10-year note recently shot above 5% to a 16-year high recently, did pull back to around 4.5%. Taking a look at the price of oil, it has been hovering at lows we haven't seen since before the Middle East flared up. And speaking of that, heavy fighting occurring throughout the Gaza Strip today. Israeli troops clearing significant areas in the center of Gaza City that were the military headquarters of Hamas. We're following those developments very closely. In economic reports today, we got a report showing unemployment lines got a little bit shorter this past week by 3,000 to 217,000. Of course, on the labor front, the big news we had last evening, the deal between the Actors Union and the studios, ending the actors' strike. The tentative deal, which both sides say include extraordinary provisions, means that more than 6 months of labor strife in the film and TV business here in Hollywood finally drawing to a close. Walt Disney stock in focus today, jumping nearly 7% after the media company reported a spike in streaming customers and better than expected earnings. Shares of Lyft pulling back about 6% after the company reported third-quarter results that beat Wall Street analysts' expectations and forecast fourth-quarter sales growth was better than expected. And AMC Entertainment Holdings, the meme stock, remember that, and theater chain down about 14% today after the company reported strong third-quarter results. The theater chain, Darling, swung to profit and reported positive net income for the second straight quarter after the market closed today. Of course, it was a one-time meme stock darling. It is a big night for business at the Stars of the 101 Awards, the Association for Corporate Growth 101 chapter, which includes businesses in the West Valley, Ventura County, and the Santa Barbara areas. We'll talk about the economy, business, and corporate deal-making tonight with Jeff Tillman with Crow LLP, founder of the Stars of the 101 event, and SHAWNA Morris, the CEO of Casa Pacifica, which is tackling issues in the area, including families facing homelessness and mental health matters. But first, on your money, the markets, the economy, the Fed shares comments today, and indeed the whole works. Joining us live now is money manager Gabriel Wisdom, managing director at American Money Management and author of Wisdom on Value Investing. Gabriel Wisdom, thank you very much for taking the call. Until today, we'd seen an impressive rally, and today a pullback on the Fed shares comments. Quite a week here, and now a bit of a pullback. Give us your assessment of things here at the moment.
Well, Frank, he was talking about a few months of good data, and what Jay Powell was really saying was that oftentimes rising prices will encourage consumers to buy what they want now before they think prices are going to go higher, and that can create a sort of a blow-off top in inflationary spirals. It's sort of like a game of musical chairs. Everybody's buying because the music is playing, and then when it stops, we get a hard landing. So Chairman Powell and the Federal Open Market Committee, they're somewhat puzzled by the few months of good data. Now, we also got a bit of I call it a trifecta of fear. There's the strong U.S. dollar. It's just stubbornly strong. That hurts U.S. exports. There's the over-leveraged Chinese economy. And then there's higher interest rates for longer. And today in Singapore at the Bloomberg New Economy Forum, very influential hedge fund manager Ken Griffin said that the world is facing unrest and structural changes that are pushing it toward deglobalization and causing higher baseline inflation and higher interest rates for much longer. He says it's all because of the spending spree that created the $33 trillion deficit. Now the so-called peace dividend is behind us because we've got to finance wars and fight inflation.
Right. In all this, we'd seen the market climb this wall of worry with the fighting raging in the Middle East, and of course the Ukraine-Russia war continuing as well. And a lot was made today of those benchmark government bond yields. We see the yield in the 10-year note now back to 4.64% after getting as low as 4.5% this week. What about those bond yields? Where do you see those bond yields go from here? And for the hard-hit folks who had a lot of money in bond funds this year, who've seen losses for the third year in a row, what's the outlook there?
You know, Frank, the consensus is that the Federal Reserve is done raising interest rates, and even Goldman Sachs is predicting lower interest rates by maybe the second or third quarter of next year. But the long-term cycles in interest rates suggest otherwise. Now, maybe it will happen. Perhaps all this additional production that we get from artificial intelligence and automation will mean that prices for things go down because it's easier to produce them. The other thing...
Half redneck, half posh. 100% fun. Trey Crowder and Corey Ryan Forrester try and learn fancy culture in Putting On Airs.
The host of the Medium Popcorn Podcast, Brandon Collins and Justin Brown.
Okay, so Paddington 2 had like 100% on Rotten Tomatoes
As
for
it
you.
should. You guys ruined that?
Justin came in and like took it down like 2 points because of his rating. That's the time we started getting death threats.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. People worship that movie.
Putting On Airs. The podcast is on YouTube and wherever you listen.
Shop GiantFood.com for holiday favorites packed with care. With more moments to share with those you love, you'll save time and impress. Now that's a gift. Save time with fast same-day delivery and pickup from Giant.
We've got going for us with regard to interest rates is we're going into the presidential election year. We're less than a year away. If history is any indication, we could have a very good 2024, regardless of who's elected, but the incumbent always has an edge. So I think with regard to rates and long-term bonds, if you own them and you're underwater, this is what the regional banks are doing. Just hold them and expect better times.
It is to be noted that the incumbent does not appear to have the edge at this point. Interesting to note that this rally came with that, I believe it was the New York Times poll, which showed former President Trump would defeat President Biden in a head-to-head election if it were held now. What about that component? Is the market looking at that?
Well, absolutely, and that'll create uncertainty, which the market never likes. And that's the whole deal with presidential elections. Since 1984, the broad market has added around 5% in the 8 weeks following Election Day through the end of the year because we've got some idea of what the next year or two is going to look like. But if you get an upset, which would be the situation with President Trump, because beating the incumbent is always odds-on difficult. If that were to happen, I'm not sure what we'd expect in the financial markets. Alan Lichtman of American University has a perfect 40-year track record over the past 10 presidential elections for calling the race. He says it'll be Biden, and it's all based on his 13 key model algorithm. But we'll see.
Yep, we'll have to wait, of course. And in the meantime, we're seeing the cryptos coming back to life recently, along with the overall market. We see Bitcoin now back above 36,000, rebounding from that horrific crypto winter we saw last year. I know you probably don't have the laser eyes on, but certainly you're probably noticing this move in the cryptos. What about Bitcoin here?
Well, with the broader adoption of crypto, BlackRock wants to roll out an exchange-traded fund. Everybody, Grayscale is getting, a nod, it looks like, from the SEC to move forward with maybe an exchange-traded fund. The adoption rate has increased. Now, what's interesting is that El Salvador made a big gamble in Bitcoin. 2 years ago, they made Bitcoin the legal tender of that Central American country. Now they're down because they paid too much 2 years ago. They've lost an estimated $40 million. But Bitcoin education is going to be compulsory in Salvador's public schools starting next year. And it's only legal to use Bitcoin, even though there's still a lot of dollars circulating in El Salvador. But I think slowly but surely, and Bitcoin is an indicator that there's wide adoption.
Very interesting. It should be noted Bitcoin is up about 120% so far this year, but still down about 45% from its peak back in November of 2021. And Bitcoin up nearly 5% in the past week or so, now trading above 36,000. And Ethereum also getting a bump up about 7.5% to above 2,000, in fact, above 2,100 here at the moment on all this ETF buzz that you mentioned. And at this point, Gabriel Wisdom, where are you putting money now into or taking it off the table?
Frank, I'm a value investor. I like to buy, when everybody's complaining. And if I'm selling, I want to sell when they're celebrating. Kind of like going to Nordstrom's for the sale. I'd rather wait. I'd like Disney, and of course, it was a big day for Disney, but they've got a number of very exciting divisions, but the conglomerate itself has lost its shine, and the stock is down considerably even after today. So I'd like an exchange-traded fund that would include Disney and the old and some new media. I also think that since we've got a SAG-AFTRA strike ending, let's call it. It's certainly been suspended, and the Screen Actors Guild situation has been squared away. It might be time to look at some of the communications companies and the big media stocks.
All right, any favorites there? Of course, you got...
It could be information to change your life forever. Or the Something You Should Know podcast could just be something interesting.
Herb Cohen is one of the all-time legendary great sales trainers and negotiators. And he has some advice that will help you negotiate better. Make the other person feel superior and smarter than you. Care, but don't care too much. If you don't like the deal, walk away and see if the deal doesn't get better instantly.
Something You Should Know, wherever you listen.
The LASIK Vision Institute offers free virtual consultations. That's all your questions answered, all from the comforts of home. So don't wait. This simple 20-minute call can start your journey to 20/20 vision. Right now, the LASIK Vision Institute's offering $1,000 off their Wavelight laser when treated in November. That's $500 off per eye with guaranteed financing. So visit mylvioffer.com now.
Must mention this promotion and be treated in November of 2023 to qualify. $1,000 off for both eyes on standard Wavelight price. $500 off for one eye. Cannot be combined with any other offers. See details at mylvioffer.com.
On Global, which is taking a beating this year. Netflix, of course, the big streamer. Any favorites on that list?
Well, Barbie failed to help Warner Brothers. Not really. I mean, certainly the stock has suffered. Paramount Global way down. It was up on this news of the SAG-AFTRA agreement. Disney's way down, but that's a very, very quality name with ESPN, Disney streaming, et cetera, and they've increased subscribers big time. Netflix, of course, is the leader, but it's been soft. So I like them all. I would say the communications and social media giants and the old school communications companies, as represented in an exchange-traded fund like XLC, I think is interesting right now. And then additionally, leisure and entertainment. A lot of these companies are very depressed, and after a while, people get tired of just holding back and worrying about inflation and rising interest rates, and they spend. So I like the exchange-traded fund PEJ. I'm looking at it. It includes some very unexciting names like Marriott, Chipotle, Airbnb, Warner Brothers Discovery is there, Lionsgate, and Royal Caribbean.
On the air live with Gabriel Wisdom with American Money Management, and here we are. We're going to be seeing a lot of the malls and shopping centers about to launch the holiday shopping season here as we head toward Thanksgiving here coming up in a couple of weeks. Gabriel Wisdom, what about the retail names as we head into the holiday shopping season?
They're also quite depressed, Frank. The broad market's been led by the Magnificent Seven or the Super 8 or whatever you want to call them. We all don't know the names of these companies, and they're trading at very elevated price to sales multiples. But there's a jolly holiday indication from a new survey from Deloitte, the accounting firm. They surveyed around 4,300 respondents around the country, and it turns out that the average person is planning to increase spending by 14% this holiday season. That's 9% more than they spent last year, so could be a pretty decent holiday, and that sets the stage for a strong market in 2024.
All right, Gabriel, well, thank you very much for coming to the line tonight, and let's see what happens tomorrow. Coming off a pretty decent rally, a bit of a pullback here today with the Dow down 220 points. And Gabriel Wisdom with American Money Management and author of Wisdom on Value Investing. It's always great to have you with us here, Gabriel. Thank you very much for taking the call here tonight.
Thank you, Frank.
Like you and me have our ear to the ground in all things business. We like to be informed and well prepared. And as important as finance is, I want you to have a plan in case you're hit by someone not paying attention to the road. Thinking ahead serves us well, and even still, we can get caught off guard as people are so focused on their destination that they might not have a plan if they're in an accident that's not their fault. And that's why I encourage you to put my friend, Attorney Clark Fielding's number in your phone under the word accident. That number is 833-88-SHARK, so all you have to do when you're in an accident, be ready to hit that number. And with your strategy to make Clark Fielding your first call. Fielding Law aims for the highest possible settlements, considering you might need long-term care, rehab, compensation for lost wages, and any ongoing physical or emotional pain. So if you're hurt in any kind of an accident, call for a free consultation with Fielding Law. You can trust them. They're honest, respected, and your strategy in case you get into that unexpected accident. Motorcycle, truck, pedestrian, scooter, hit and run, boating, or bike accidents, you name it. 833-88-SHARK. Again, that number is 833-88-SHARK, or go to clarkthesharklaw.com. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KBC. 790 KBC welcomes Disney Junior Live on tour, coming to the Acrisure Arena November 17th. Tickets are on sale now at Ticketmaster.com. Right now, caller 9 wins at 1-888-790-5222. You can get a pair of tickets to the show if you're caller 9. Call right now, 1-888-790-5222. Mottek On Money continues here on 790 KBC. A pullback for the stock market after the longest winning streak the market has seen in a couple of years. The Dow coming in for a closing loss today of 220 points. The settle at 33,892. The S&P 500 down 35 at 4,347. And the NASDAQ down 129 at 13,521. The yield in the 10-year note now back to 4.64%. After dipping to 4.5% earlier in the week. That's the one that impacts the fixed-rate mortgage rate. Stocks initially started the day higher, but the market fizzled out after the Fed Chairman Jerome Powell gave a speech today before the International Monetary Fund and suggested interest rates might not be high enough, in his view, yet to bring inflation sustainably down to the Fed's 2% annual target. Powell said the Fed's 2% goal is not assured inflation, he said, has given us a few head fakes. The price of gold in all this pulling back down nearly $6 at $1,963.90 an ounce. Oil down 34 cents here now at $75.40 a barrel. Cryptos, though, continue on a roll. We see Bitcoin up $74 at $36,630. Ethereum up $50 at $2,110 and Doge at 7 cents. Here's a name from the past, astronaut Frank Borman, who led the first team to circle the moon in December of 1968 and was later chief executive of Eastern Airlines back in the 1970s and 80s, has died this week at the age of 95. Frank Borman commanded the Apollo mission with crewmates Jim Lovell and Bill Anders. Of course, Frank Borman took on the Machinists Union back in those days, and when he was with Eastern Airlines and headed up Eastern back in the 70s and 80s and was a big businessman in the South Florida area for many years. Astronaut Frank Borman has died at the age of 95. All right, and this event is a big deal, and talking about it, big deals of this year, M&A deals. It turned out to be a pretty big year for M&A activity, and there's probably going to be a year-end push for even more big corporate deals. Less than a month ago, we saw Chevron announce that it entered into a deal to buy Hess Corporation, another oil giant, acquiring all of the outstanding shares of Hess. That was an all-stock transaction valued at $53 billion. Or $171 per share based on Chevron's closing price back on October 20th. That was one of the big deals that recently we've seen. And also Broadcom acquiring VMware. This is another big deal valued at $69 billion. Broadcom, of course, one of the globally leading semiconductor companies, announcing a $69 billion acquisition of VMware. That's another big tech company. Another big deal, Pfizer acquiring Seagen this year. That deal valued at $43 billion. Pfizer, of course, the drug giant, a multinational pharmaceutical and biotech company set to acquire Seagen, another big biotech company, for $229 per share for a total value of $43 billion. Amgen acquiring Horizon Therapeutics. That deal valued at nearly $28 billion. The Federal Trade Commission reaching a deal with Amgen, the biopharmaceutical company, that will allow the nearly $28 billion deal to proceed. And we see Newmont acquiring Newcrest Mining, big deal in the mining business. That deal valued at $19 billion this year. The American gold mining company Newmont securing a $19 billion deal to acquire the Austrian rival Newcrest Mining. And that deal will subsequently allow Newmont to secure the position as the largest global bullion producer at a critical moment with gold so much in focus, with mines located in the U.S., Africa, Australia, as well as Papua New Guinea. And another big deal this year, Bunge acquiring Viterra. That deal valued at $18 billion. The American agribusiness and food company Bunge plans to acquire Viterra, agricultural business headquartered in Rotterdam, in a deal valued at $18 billion. Well, taking a look at today's market action, a pullback after the longest market winning streak in 2 years. The Dow coming in for a closing loss today of 220 points, the 33,892. The S&P 500 down 35 at 4,347. And the NASDAQ sliding 129 back to 13,521. Gold down about $6 today at $1,963.90 an ounce. Crude oil down 34 cents at $75.40 a barrel. And a Bitcoin up $74 at $36,630.
Former Navy SEAL Sean Ryan shares real stories from real people from all walks of life on The Sean Ryan Show.
Tennessee Congressman Tim Burchett.
Where do the majority of UAP sightings happen?
Yeah, military installations, but I couch that. If they're going to fly here and check something out, they're going to see where our best and brightest are, I would assume. They asked me about seeing any UFOs in Washington, D.C., and I said, no. I said, there's no intelligent life around here.
The Sean Ryan Show on YouTube or wherever you listen.